Greetings and salutations, shoppers. This is Mr. Venom welcoming you to the Crystal Lake gift shop. Before we get into our festivities for the day, let's go ahead and introduce my cohorts. As always, our store manager is Mr. Mike Maryman. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well. It's like our shop closed at the end of winter and skipped spring, and now it's summer somehow because it's hot here today.
Oh yeah, it was 101 in LA today, which
Oh my
which
God.
I was in my element. I absolutely loved it. I wanted it to be hotter, but I'm an outlier when it comes to that stuff, so I understand that. And also coming to us with her new promotion, she is now the merchandiser for the Crystal Lake gift shop. It is Miss Lacy Lou. How you doing, Lacy?
Just throw me to the mulcher.
I figured you were sick of being a cashier. That's not really a very glamorous job, so.
It didn't pay very well.
Exactly. Now you get to decide what we sell in the shop. Go figure. Ooh. Well, with my say, of course, but still.
I would like to sell cursed edibles.
Oh, I don't know if those will sell, but possibly.
I think there would be a market for it. I think
it depends on the curse. Yeah. All right, folks. So, of course, we are here to discuss all things Friday the 13th, the series, and we are up to episode 9. This episode is entitled The Root of All Evil. It first aired November 28th, 1987, coming to us at a length of 46 minutes. Our synopsis is as follows. Ryan and Mickey search for a cursed mulcher, which is the murder weapon of choice for a gardener's assistant. Now, friends, a mulcher, that's not exactly something that you can fit in a vault, but we'll get to that, I guess. It is directed by Alan King, written by the usual suspects, Frank Mancuso and Larry Williams. An additional writer for this episode is Rob Hedden, who actually has an interesting story about how he picked our cursed object for this episode, which I'll go over a little bit later. Let's go ahead and just get into our general thoughts. Now, I actually have a lot to say about this one, so I'm going to go ahead and go last and give Mike and Lacy the chance to say everything they want, because, yeah, I've got a lot to throw in about this one. But let's go ahead and start with our new merchandiser, Miss Lacy Lou. Lacy, what did you think of Root of All Evil?
Yeah, so I this episode I always get like excited. Like I never like read the synopsis. So like the only time like I'll ever know like in advance what the cursed object is if Mike tells me in advance. So I had no idea what it was going to be. And at first I thought it was going to be a rake because I think it's definitely up there for one of my favorite death scenes. Where it takes the rake. I thought it was going to be a cursed rake. I really did. I'm a little disappointed that it wasn't. That poor old lady. This episode, it felt different compared to the other ones. It feels like it was, Mickey was definitely like more grounded, and it actually like kind of focused in on, her debating what she was going to do with her life and stay with the shop or not. And I thought that was a really interesting aspect. Yeah, and her fiance came, and it just had a little bit more drama to it than the other ones do. It was a little bit slower paced, I think, because of that. But it was definitely like an interesting dynamic because they did make reference to, again, the cousin thing, and he was definitely like hitting on her. But it did come with her saying, or him saying, yeah, her fiance or whatever. He was like, yeah, you guys are only related by marriage, wink, wink, So like it's almost like they're like setting it up for them to be love interests later on. But like I don't think that happens. But it's just weird that they're even like going that route, period. But I thought it was interesting to have a more grounded storyline in between them this time. Jack was kind of a dick throughout the whole thing, but I love when he goes to the psychiatric ward from the guy from the beginning, and that guy should get a fucking Oscar when he's just spinning around in his chair. And I thought this it has a lot of really fun moments. I did learn one thing because of it. I always thought that like the gardener's assistant, the one who like ends up taking over after that, he's actually I think his name's Enrico. Yeah, he plays Veronica Mars's dad. And I totally for the last like probably 15 years since Veronica Mars came out. Well, I guess that would have been in like oh 06 maybe. So almost 20 years, I guess. I had thought that he was the detective in Valentine because I was like, oh my God, he looks so familiar, but like I don't really know him with like dark hair. I mean, he barely had hair here still, but I was like, why does he look so familiar? And I couldn't place it. And, like Veronica Mars is like my favorite show. So I looked him up and I thought forever that he was the detective that Denise Richards wanted to fuck in Valentine. And I just found out today that it is not him, but they look a lot of fucking like. So that was interesting to find out for me. I know that has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but yeah. So I learned something new because of this episode. Blinky blinky, yes. But yeah, I thought it was overall a fun episode. It added in like the extra element to where the cursed object, it becomes about like social class, like of who you kill in this fucking thing. As always, like when one of the people, like the villains die, I love how like nonchalant everybody is and nobody like gives a fuck. That one was very much encased here, which I thought was hilarious. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
Nice. All right, Mike, why don't you come on in here, give us some general thoughts on Root of All Evil.
Yeah, so 9 episodes in and Mickey's not sure if she wants to stay. That's interesting because, we're still early in the series. I think this episode was interesting because I know from all the ones we've covered so far, sometimes there is like a minor subplot going on besides just like tracking down the cursed object. But this one felt like there was a lot of time dedicated to it, which was Mickey's like fiance. I forgot if they're already married or if they're gonna get married or if they're trying to decide, but they spent like a lot of time on her and her significant other. I'm like, what do you want to do with your life? Why are you staying here? And she almost made the decision to leave and then decides not to. The awkward, like Lacey already brought it up, but the awkward scene when the guy's like, yeah, you're only related by marriage. And it's not just that he says that, but then the camera like pans to Ryan looking all disappointed because I think Mickey said like, she's like, Ryan, that would be so weird for me to like even like him, and then it pans to like sad face Ryan. And like I said before on other episodes, the majority of these I haven't seen since I first saw as a kid, so I don't know if they ever try to go down like a romantic route with them, because I know he does get replaced. I think the first episode of the 3rd season, they bring in the other guy. So I can't remember if either of them have a romantic thing with Mickey or if it's very lightly alluded to and it never goes there. So I'll just have to, take that as it comes, I guess. As far as the cursed object, this was a weird one because one, it just seems random as hell because we're used to cursed items like, something portable, something you can kind of carry around, something that makes sense that you could actually get away with murdering people without like it being traced to you, because like a cursed doll, no one's going to believe that a cursed doll murdered someone, or like a pair of boxing gloves or a mirror or something. But like a mulching machine, like you would think that would leave behind enough evidence. Like forget the cursed part about the money aspect of it, but just the fact that you're tossing someone in a mulcher, like it'd be a little more difficult to cover your tracks on, like, unless like, so like part of the unspoken part of the curse is it magically disposes of all the mess it would leave behind, but I don't think they ever got into that. I mean, it's fine. It's not like it's not really that big of a nitpick. It's like it's a Friday the 13th series. Like I know they're gonna make decisions like that just to move the story along. But what else can I say? I don't think, did Jack ever have to get dressed up in a costume in this one? And if not,
he's a gardener.
I can't remember what he looked
Man,
like
when did you
as the
watch this
gardener.
episode? In 1987? Yes, him and Ryan are both dressed as gardeners.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't remember. How elaborate was their gardening outfits? Was it pretty?
The overalls, like the whole 3rd act of the episode, they were in overalls.
Okay.
Like Michael Myers.
Yeah.
Oh God. But yeah, overall, it was just kind of an interesting episode. I wonder if like there just wasn't a lot of story there, and that's why they had a big subplot going on. Like it makes me kind of interested in like when they develop the episodes and the writing, like how they decide like what extra story is going to be in certain episodes, where some are more straightforward, where they focus on the cursed object and tracking down the whole time, where this one had like see more side story going on. But
Someone was probably like having yard work done and had to like hire a gardener to come in. Because like obviously like they probably have money and they're like, oh, you know what? It'd be cool if people died and money came out of it.
You're very, very close, but like I said, I have the actual story that I'll relay at the end of the episode.
Yeah, and so I'll leave my general thoughts off with the final thing. Is one of my favorite parts of this episode, and I like it whenever they do it because it's not every episode, but once in a while we actually get a look like inside the vault and like other stuff that's kind of sitting in there, not just the cursed item of the specific episode. Like in this one, they walk through a few different items, but then you actually got to see the doll that wasn't the cursed object of the episode kind of like activate itself, like it was like ready to do the curse when she's like, get out of here. But so I thought that was cool. I like that anytime that happens in an episode randomly. So I'll leave it there for now.
All right. Well, let me bring down the mood. I did not like this episode. I am not a big fan of this episode, and I have a multitude of reasons why. A lot of them I'm going to go over, when we do our kind of sort of walkthrough, which should be fairly quick because there's so little going on in this episode. But okay, first and foremost, we get no backstory on the Mulcher at all in any way, shape, or form. At least in the last episode with the boxing gloves, we got a minimal backstory, but we still did get something. We get nothing with the Mulcher. We just have to accept that it's evil and that it's cursed, and that's it. No explanation, no how did it get cursed, like who was the first one to discover it was cursed, blah, 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 blah. Like so much about the backstory of this cursed item is kept from us as the audience. And I feel like that's what we lost because of all the extra Mickey and Lloyd stuff in the episode. Okay, speaking of Mickey and Lloyd, I fucking hated everything about their interactions. My friends, I can't imagine there's one fucking person on the planet who would tune into an episode of Friday the 13th, the series, to find out how Mickey's marriage is going. Like, not fucking one. Now, I understand because Lacy's not the first one to say that she enjoyed that. I've seen other people. I read reviews for the episode. It seems like some people do enjoy that. I myself do not. I am here to watch cursed objects kill people in fucked up ways. Like, that's why I am here. I'm not here for the end of the episode joke. I'm not here for the camaraderie between the three people running the store. And I'm sure as fuck not here for Mickey's marriage drama. Is it outright bad? Is it objectively bad? No. As Lacy has already said, she kind of enjoyed it. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to enjoy it. But as a reviewer, I have to speak my truth. And my truth is I fucking hated this episode. We never get to see the thing get put back in the vault. Now, obviously, it's been 4 or 5 episodes since we've seen the cursed object actually get placed back into the vault. But because this cursed object was so fucking big, I feel like they owed it to us. Like, I wanted to see old ass Jack and weak ass Ryan trying to carry this Mulcher down the stairs to the vault and then have to wheel it in there, which is going to take up most of the floor space in there. That little bit of comedy, I think, would have elevated this episode just a little bit for me. One of the worst opening deaths ever. The cold open of this episode. My friends, when you hit someone in the head with a rake, you don't just end up with 5 little blood circles on your forehead. For God's sakes, there should have been a shitload more blood. Again, I understand it's 1987. It's a TV series, so they kind of have to work with limitations, but I'd have rather they just not had a wound at all than give us the ridiculous cartoonish looking wound that they give us here. It made zero fucking sense. Our main antagonist, our gardening assistant, what a moron. I mean, he has to be, without question, the dumbest antagonist we've ever had. Now, we talked about the guy in the Shadow Boxer episode and how he literally had scar tissue in his head which was affecting his mental capabilities. This guy is just so stupid. He has no forethought whatsoever. He literally thinks that he's going to kill the richest person in the area and no one's going to question it, and that he's just going to walk out of town and suddenly have her net worth in a bag. The other thing, too, is I'm always astounded whenever you have a situation where a guy owes money to bad people, the mob or, loan sharks, whatever the case may be. But then rather than getting money and paying them back, they decide, fuck it, I'm just going to keep the money and leave town. And it's like, again, no forethought whatsoever. Pay your debts, you idiot. At least if you pay off your loan shark or your bookie or whoever you owe money to, at least then you can come back home periodically. If you leave now and don't pay off your debts, you can never come back to this town, because as soon as anybody who recognizes you sees you, they're going to put a bullet in your fucking head. So just, the idiocy, the absolute stupidity of our antagonist in this episode just wore on me. I mean, I actually thought he was mentally challenged. I don't know if you guys got that impression. There were multiple times in the episode where I thought he was legitimately mentally challenged. Like, that's what he was playing. Not the actor necessarily, but that the character that he was playing him as maybe a little slow.
I thought his first appearance in the episode looked like Bub from Day of the Dead without the makeup.
Thank you. Or Bubba from Forrest Gump. I mean, yeah, with the big open maw. Just, goddamn, that guy. Somebody mentions the teeth from hell. Oh, the old guy, the guy in the cold open, the guy who's now in a mental institution. He mentions the teeth of hell, or teeth from hell, but then no one ever brings it up again. And it's like, that had promise. Like, if this thing actually has a history and people know of its existence and they actually call it like the teeth from hell or the mouth from hell or whatever they said in the episode, I'm on board for that. But no, they literally just say teeth from hell and then that's it. It's never brought up again. So yeah, very disappointing. And ultimately, like I said, I'll go over everything else that bothered me about this episode as we talk about it. But I had a really bad time with this episode. It actually took me 2 sittings to finish it. Halfway through the episode, I was just so sick of Lloyd. Again, I don't claim to understand women, but I will never in a million fucking years ever understand how a woman could be that mistreated. Granted, it's not like she's being physically abused, but that's mental abuse. That's not support. That's him not being supportive of her choices. It's like, I don't understand why women want to marry these guys. Like, is the dick that good? Is it really that good that you're willing to marry a douchebag? I don't know. It just seems odd to me.
Like, it had to be the most passionless kiss ever seen on screen. It was so cringe inducing. So I'm like, oh, she's going to break up with him here. This kiss is so bad, like she's so not into it. And then after she's like, I'll go back with you. I'm like, what? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? That didn't even have a tongue.
Yeah, no self-esteem at all. I just don't understand. I mean, Lloyd is obviously an 80s, WASP yuppie. For those who are old enough or young enough that don't know what a WASP is, WASP stands for White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. It basically, back in the early part of the 1900s, all the way up to like the 70s and 80s, it was like a general insult for white people, like the whitest of white people. So yeah, Lloyd is basically the whitest of white people. He obviously has money. The fact that he can travel from wherever it is that him and Mickey actually live to come to this town and check up on her. I mean, the guy actually thought he was cheating on her. Like, I don't understand the mentality of wanting to marry a guy who doesn't trust you. I'm sorry. If I didn't trust Mrs. Venom, I would not be married to her right now. It's that fucking simple. I don't understand. And granted, I'm older. I understand young people tend to think differently about relationships, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, like I said, it's just that there's so much about this episode that just infuriated me. It is easily my least favorite episode of the series. And thankfully, the only good thing that really comes out of this is we're not going to see Lloyd anymore. For those who don't know, Lloyd was never supposed to be on the show after episode 1. He was literally, his contract was for 1 episode, to just be in that first episode. They decided to bring him back for this episode, probably because of what Mike was saying, that our storyline for this one's fairly weak and, not very deep. It's fairly shallow. So let's bring Lloyd back for 1 episode to do like an official breakup. But yeah, I can tell you now, we don't see Lloyd ever again after this. And thank God we can get back to just cursed objects. I just don't care. Don't get me wrong, folks. It's not like I'm the least romantic guy on the planet. I like romance, but there's a place and a time for it. And I'm not turning into Friday the 13th, the series, to watch romance. It's that fucking simple. So yeah, this episode just didn't work for me on any level. I didn't like the cursed object. I didn't like the lack of a backstory on the cursed object. I didn't like the stupidity of our main antagonist. I didn't like the stupidity of our main protagonist with Mickey and her, back and forth on this Lloyd character. One of the things that I will praise this episode for is it took 9 episodes to get there, but we finally had a tender moment between the cousins, and that I actually liked. The episode doesn't end with the traditional end of episode joke that we always get. It ends with a tender moment between the cousins, and I actually like that. I like to see these cousins get along. I want to see them, be on task, have a certain focus of getting these cursed objects back. Not this whole back and forth with relationships and should I leave the shop and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, this episode is one I may never, ever return to. It's just not very fun for me. Overall, it's my least favorite episode, but it's still not a terrible one, ultimately. There's a lot about it that bothered me, but ultimately, it's still not awful. Yes, it took me 2 sittings to get through because halfway through the episode yesterday, I just found myself pulling my hair out. Like, this episode is just infuriating. It's just frustrating me left and right. I had to stop it, and I finished it today, and I almost stopped it again today. It almost took me 3 sittings to finish a 46-minute episode. That's how insipid I found this episode. So yeah, if you enjoy it, rock on. I'm happy for you. I really am. I always want to like every episode of this series when I, pop it on, but I just can't with this one. I have to be truthful. There's, like I said, very little I liked about it. I really only like the end, the tender moment, and the lack of a stupid dad joke at the end made for a great ending. But it's just the rest of the episode that left me just very frustrated, literally after finishing this episode, it was the first time that I actually thought about, maybe this podcast isn't worth it. Literally the first time I had second thoughts about this podcast. Obviously, it's not going anywhere, I assure you folks. But yeah, oh my God, this episode was a slog. The pacing is awful because of all the Mickey stuff. Once the Mickey stuff comes in, if you don't care about it, you're literally just sitting there waiting for the scene to end. Can we get back to the curse? Please, can we get back to the curse? Again, if you enjoyed it, I'm glad for you. I really am. So let's go ahead and get into this story. It's fairly basic. You probably already gathered most of the plot points from what we've already discussed. Very simple. Our episode opens up with a cold open that shows a gardener being yelled at by the person who hired him. I'm assuming we never actually get their relationship, but basically she's browbeating him and just constantly telling him about all the messed up things that he does and how he's not efficient and blah, blah, blah. Finally, he gets pissed off, takes a rake, hits her in the forehead with the rake, which leaves 5 little round red dots on her forehead. Amazing. And then she falls over, and then he picks up the body and he just throws it unceremoniously into the mulcher. That's all we see right now. We don't see anything come out of the mulcher. It seems like we don't even have a cursed object, honestly, because there was nothing, at least in the cold open by itself, without any context, nothing really supernatural happens. I mean, we see a guy get frustrated, hit a woman with a rake, and throw her in the mulcher. That's Fargo, basically. So after that, we then go to Curious Goods. Jack finds an old letter that was written to him, or that was written to Uncle Lewis, excuse me. And the letter was never opened. It turns out the letter was delivered 2 days after Uncle Lewis passed away. When they open the note comes to us from a Harley O'Connor, and there's $100 bill in the letter. And the letter basically addresses Lewis and says, thank you for everything you've done for me, blah, blah, blah. It seems like the guy was aware that this object was cursed. I mean, I'm sure Uncle Lewis wasn't exactly hiding the fact when he was running Curious Goods and selling the objects. He was probably happily selling cursed objects. But they go through the manifest. I love when they go into the manifest and Ryan finds it within 5 seconds. It's like this manifest looks like it's a couple hundred pages long, but they always find the entry they're looking for like in 3 seconds. And it starts to get a little annoying. Again, I understand it's not like you're going to have a 3-minute scene in a 46-minute episode of Ryan looking through the book, but I don't know, give us like a 10-second montage of him just flipping through pages just to show us that he didn't find it on the first try. Because if Jack found it on the first try, that might be a little bit more believable because Jack's more familiar with the manifest. Ryan is not. Ryan's been here for 2 months. Oh, and we also get confirmation that it has been 2 months since the cousins have been here. If you remember last episode, I was questioning what the actual timeline of the show was. Like, we get 1 episode a week. Is that also the timeline of the show where it's, we're actually 8-9 weeks in? And yes, we got confirmation in this episode that it has been 2 months. So they discover that a mulcher was bought by this person, this Harley O'Connor, but they don't know what the mulcher does. Obviously, the manifest doesn't tell you what the cursed objects do. They may give you some information on how it's cursed or how it was cursed, but they don't necessarily tell you how they work. So they go ahead and look up Harley O'Connor. It turns out he is now, they go to his house. His house is abandoned. The caretaker of the property basically tells them that he is now in a mental institution. Jack and Mickey then go to, or just Jack, excuse me, Jack by himself goes to the institution, talks to O'Connor, and actually talks to him like he knows what the mulcher does. And that he basically goes to O'Connor under the guise of wanting the mulcher. He even says to O'Connor, I want the mulcher. I want to use it the way that you did. And instantly you see O'Connell's face just light up, big old shit-eating grin on his face. Like he's so happy that that Jack potentially is just as much of a degenerate as he is. He lets Jack know where the mulcher was. Jack and Mickey and Ryan end up finding out that the mulcher is actually on the property of this rich woman who has a bunch of gardeners, both hired and volunteers, that work on her property. And this is where we meet Schmitty, Robert Smith. Smitty is basically he's like the old-time gardener who's been there for years. Looks like he's right around retirement age, and he is now the new owner of the mulcher. Unfortunately, he doesn't know what the mulcher does. And why doesn't he know what the mulcher does? Because the mulcher never spoke to him. Yes, we don't actually hear the mulcher speaking, but obviously when our main antagonist, I think his name is Charles in this episode. No, Adrian. When Adrian looks into the mulcher as it's working, he stares into it like it's a mouth, like it's actually speaking to him. And you can almost see the reaction on his face, almost like he's acknowledging, yes, yes. Finally, they turn off the mulcher. They go to work on a different part of the property. At one point, Smitty goes to Adrian and says, hey, I need you to finish these things over here. I'm going to go finish this part over here. Adrian tells them, no, go ahead. Just go home. I'll finish everything. No problem. Smitty goes home, leaving Adrian alone. That's when Adrian then goes to the mulcher, turns it on, and continues to stare into the quote-unquote mouth of the mulcher, if you will, just kind of staring at it intensely. Then finally, a homeless person shows up, apparently a homeless person who knows who Adrian is. The homeless guy basically tells him, dude, man, you're in debt with, some really bad people for a lot of money. If I were to tell them where you are, I don't think it would be a good day for you. So, of course, Adrian offers to pay this guy off, but the guy gets greedy. The homeless guy literally says, all right, you're going to give me $500 a week every week, and I'll shut up. I won't tell them where you are. And Adrian's like, no, dude, I don't have that kind of money. What are you talking about? The homeless guy says, oh, well, too bad for you. But then Adrian grabs the bottle that he's drinking out of, smashes the homeless guy in the head with the bottle, and then throws him into the mulcher. And then this is where we find out what the mulcher actually does. Rather than spitting out bone and sinew and flesh and hair from the other end, it spits out money. Literal cash. Unfortunately, all of the money is dated 1937. It's not fake money necessarily. It's not like it's counterfeit. It's just that it's all dated 1937 and it's all brand new money. Like it's all brand new bills. And the reason that the money is dated 1937 because the mulcher was built in 1937. And that's all the backstory we get on this mulcher. That's it. So your guess is as good as mine as to how this thing got cursed. So. And then he, of course, he's a criminal. So he gets the idea of, ooh, I might be able to make my money and, pay off my debts. So he starts basically taking people out. Unfortunately, the next person that he takes out is Smitty. The reason that he takes out Smitty is because Mickey and Ryan actually show up at the property one day. They basically ask Smitty a few questions because they're trying to gauge if Smitty is aware of what's happening, if he knows what the mulcher does, or if he doesn't. They're under the agreement that, yeah, Smitty doesn't know. And, we get that confirmation while watching the episode. Smitty doesn't know what the hell that thing does. So Ryan and Mickey actually offer him $2,500 for the mulcher, which is an exuberant price in 1987 for a 50-year-old mulcher, one that's literally about to retire. The thing looks like, old as shit. Smitty says, you got a deal. Let me go get the mulcher for you. Unfortunately, Adrian overhears this conversation, and obviously Adrian is now kind of taken with the mulcher, so he's not going to allow Smitty to sell it. So, of course, as expected, unfortunately, he does attack Smitty. Smitty, I'll give him credit, man. He defends himself. He fights back. Like, even though he's an old guy, he looks like he's in his 70s. I mean, he fights back, but unfortunately, Adrian is able to overpower him, ends up killing him and putting him in the mulcher. And then we see more money come out. Even more money comes out than what came out the first time with the homeless person. This is when we find out from Jack that the mulcher actually spits out more based on the person's worth. That's all they say is worth. They don't say monetary worth. They just say based on the person's worth, the machine spits out the appropriate amount of money. I think Adrian makes that realization because after he put Schmitty in there, he got more money. So now he decides, I'm going to go after, one of these people that's actually working at the house, one of the suit and tie guys. He ends up going after one of the party planners, an older gentleman in a, nice suit and tie. Basically, he's asking Adrian, have you seen Smitty? Smitty didn't show up for work today, and that's not like him. Adrian lies and says, oh, yeah, Smitty's down by the shed, which is where he's keeping the mulcher. Obviously, the guy goes down there, and Adrian does end up killing him. And this time, when he sticks the guy in the mulcher, he ends up getting a bag full of money. Like it almost fills up the whole mulch bag. He sticks his whole hand in there and just pulls out, wads of cash, all $100 bills and all the old $100 bills too. I mean, don't forget, they're dated 1937. So then Adrian has the idea, okay, I'm going to go ahead and go after the old woman, the actual matriarch of this family, this rich family that lives on this property. She's basically spending her money taking care of the property, building monuments to like her late husband and things like that. Eventually, and by the way, folks, I am totally skipping all of the Mickey and Lloyd drama shit. So if you really are that interested in it, yeah, go check it out on YouTube because I don't even feel like talking about it. Maybe Mike and Lacy will chime in after the walkthrough to kind of talk a little bit more about the emotional aspect of this episode. But anyway, let's see. Adrian decides to take out the old lady. At this point, Jack and Ryan have now volunteered to do gardening work on this woman's property. So we now see Jack and Ryan in, like Lacy said, Michael Myers' dark blue overalls. We see them doing actual gardening work. And eventually, Jack and Ryan split up. They decide to search different parts of the property. Ryan ends up finding the golf cart that the gardeners use to travel on the property. And when he looks inside of it, there's a bag filled with money. He pulls out one of the wads of cash, sees that the money is dated 1937. So obviously Ryan knows where this bag of money came from. At that moment, Adrian comes out of the woodwork and sees Ryan looking into the bag. Ryan doesn't notice Adrian, but Adrian notices Ryan. Ryan doesn't take any of the money. He puts it back in the bag, and then he runs to try to find Jack to let him know, hey, the person who's using the mulcher is definitely here. I found this bag of money. Unfortunately, while Ryan goes to try to find Jack, Adrian follows Ryan, ends up attacking him, or not attacking him, chasing him. And then Ryan, like the absolute dipshit that he is, literally trips and knocks himself out. Let me repeat that, folks. He trips and knocks himself out. God damn it. Anyway, eventually Adrian takes Ryan's knocked out body to a shed, locks him in there, and then goes to go get the mulcher. Actually, he goes to go get the old lady. So I'm assuming he's going to take care of Ryan after he takes care of the old lady. At this point, Jack is looking for Ryan because Ryan didn't show up at their rendezvous point. Jack eventually finds Ryan locked in a barn. Ryan's obviously bleeding from the forehead because he fell down and knocked himself out. Ryan lets him know, hey, I know who it is. It's the balding gardener. Jack says, oh, I just saw him and he was on his way to the house. And then we see Adrian actually walk into the house, something a gardener probably should never do. But yeah, he walks right into the mansion, goes right up to the woman's office, the older woman, the matriarch's office, and basically just starts speaking real cryptic about her funding him for the rest of his life and supporting him. She doesn't know what he's talking about, but then finally he pulls out a screwdriver, puts it up to her throat, and starts to take her out of the house to take her to the mulcher. But then everybody shows up. Ryan shows up, Jack shows up, Mickey shows up, even fucking Lloyd shows up. Mickey and Lloyd were supposed to be leaving that day because, Mickey had made the decision to leave Curious Goods. They end up coming to the property to say their goodbyes. But because Ryan is missing, Mickey realizes that there's something wrong. Of course, Lloyd, the douchebag, doesn't want her to go looking for Ryan. He thinks that Ryan's doing it on purpose to, just to keep her in town. I don't know why the hell this guy thinks Ryan is in love with his own cousin, but whatever. There's a standoff. Everybody's standing around the mulcher. Adrian has the old lady. Ryan is at the back of the mulcher, kind of blocking it so that, nobody can get thrown in. And eventually, like I said, this is what I mean about the forethought of this guy. He literally has like 5 people around him and he doesn't care. He literally is like, oh no, I'm killing this old lady and I'm taking her money. Like he's saying this in front of everyone, like he's some kind of fucking criminal mastermind. But eventually what ends up happening is he talks about, oh, this woman's going to fund me for the rest of my life. I'm going to be rich. And then Ryan goes, oh, no, you won't. And he pulls out the big bag of money that he got for the party planner. He takes it and he throws it into the mulcher. Of course, Adrian goes after it. He ends up grabbing the bag of money, and rather than releasing the bag of money and, getting to fight another day, he just holds on to it until he is finally pulled all the way into the mulcher. Now, one major issue that I have with this mulcher, and again, I understand this is 1987, it's a TV series, you can't have that much blood. It really fucking bothered me that there was not one drop of blood from anyone thrown in the mulcher. Now, I'm not talking about the back end where it spits out everything, because the only thing coming out of the back end is money, literally just cash. But when, I don't know how many people hearing my voice right now have ever actually used a mulcher, but the mulcher still spits a little bit of the material back out the mouth area. So if you stick a human in a mulcher, even if no blood or bone or anything comes out the back end, there's still going to be some spillage in the front part. And it bothered me that not once did we see any blood in this thing. I mean, they literally could have given us just a quick splash, just to kind of, it doesn't have to be that visceral or gory, just a quick little splash of a couple of drops of blood. But nope.
Yeah, that's what I was saying in my general thoughts. Like, I don't know how it didn't make a mess in the process of murdering people in it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously nothing's going to get spit out the back end other than money, but yeah, there should be some blood splatter in the front chamber, where they put everybody in. But again, whatever, suspension of disbelief. I guess we have to allow it. And then after that, well, I guess I will say that, yes, Mickey and Lloyd do end up calling it quits. They don't officially say anything, but it's very much implied when he makes an accusation to Mickey about her wanting to stay here and wanting to be with Ryan. And, she basically just kind of turns her back to him. And then he just walks out of Curious Goods. And I can confirm that we never see Lloyd again. So thank God. I'm not even happy that they brought him back for this episode, because I personally feel like it added nothing to this episode whatsoever. It just slowed down the pace of the episode. It ends up costing us vital explanation of the cursed object, the comedy of Jack and Ryan moving that mulcher into the vault. Like, we miss out on all of this just so that they can give us a culmination of Mickey and Lloyd's relationship, with which, like I said, I didn't care about to begin with. So before I get into like little facts about the episode, anything else you guys want to add now that we're done with the walkthrough? Lacy, why don't you jump in?
I love that you just like hate that backstory so much with
Yep.
What I did look up, I thought it was interesting that Lloyd is in 3 episodes, the actor that plays him. I guess he reappears later because there's only 2 episodes where he's credited as Lloyd. So it'll be interesting to have him pop up as whoever the Steve person is that I see him credited for. I didn't look and see what episode that's going to be because I want it to be a surprise. But I always think it's funny when they do that. Like, they try to pull like a fast one. So I'm curious if they will actually like try to disguise him. But he also looked really familiar to me for some reason. He kind of looked like the guy that, like the villain from, I know it's not him, but he reminded me of the villain from Little Monsters for some reason. I think it's the hair, like that typical like late 80s, like permy hair thing that he had going on. He also reminded me of the guy from Heathers, but it's not him. But he has done quite a few horror things. He was actually in one of the Final Destination movies. I think it was part 5 as the eye doctor, I think I want to say.
Nice.
So I found that interesting. So I love seeing when, actors are in these anthology shows and then you see that they did more horror films later, even if it wasn't like a big role. But he did look familiar. He wasn't anybody that I thought he was. So I guess he just has one of those typical faces for that time period.
Yeah. And also, Lacy, to counter your comment about Enrico Colantoni and being on Veronica Mars, he is actually in my absolute favorite sci-fi comedy of all time. He plays Mathazar in Galaxy Quest, which I absolutely adore that movie. I mean, I almost watch it monthly. I love that movie so much. But yeah, unfortunately, he plays an alien in the movie, so I didn't recognize him right away. I knew I recognized the face. I had to go to IMDb and look it up. But yeah, he is Mathazar in Galaxy Quest, which, like I said, bar none, my favorite sci-fi comedy of all time. I absolutely adore it. And yes, that includes Spaceballs. But yeah, go ahead, Lacy.
Have you ever seen Party Down?
Yeah, with Adam Scott, absolutely.
Yes, yeah, he's in like I want to say it's like either the first or second episode because it's Rob Thomas and he also did Veronica Mars.
Nice.
But he's like a guest star in that first episode, and I think it's the first episode. And he like gets naked and like skinny dips in a pool, and he just goes. He's like talking about how everybody like in the town like just puts Christmas lights on, and he's like everybody's just blinky, and he's like really drunk, and it's fucking hilarious. Definitely check that show out; it's amazing.
Party Down rules.
I didn't finish the series, but I remember watching the first 5 or 6 episodes and really liking it. I don't know why I didn't finish it.
I didn't see the new one because they did like a reunion season, didn't they?
You got me.
Yeah, like it falls off a bit because like certain characters like leave and then like new characters come in and it gets kind of weird. But like I haven't watched the new season either that they did a couple years ago.
Cool. All right. Well, let's go ahead and talk about a few facts on this episode. Now, obviously, if you're paying attention, the message of this episode is very, very heavy-handed. Well, maybe not very heavy-handed. That might be a little bit of a misnomer, but because obviously at the surface, the message is more about the monetary value of these people. Like, it's assumed that the money that you yield from putting them in the mulcher is directly based on their monetary holdings. And the writer of this episode says, no, that is not the case. The moral of this episode is a person's true wealth is judged not by their bank account, but by the content of their character. Obviously, the homeless guy at the beginning, what's the content of his character? You know, that's probably why Adrian only got a few bucks out of him. But then Smitty is the absolute salt of the earth. You know, he's one of these older guys that's worked his entire life. Everybody who knows him loves him. Hence why he was able to get a little bit more money from him. Now, obviously, we don't know much about the party planner, but obviously the party planner must have been doing some pretty important stuff too. Obviously, he's helping out the matriarch of this family honor her dead husband. So that obviously has a lot of, character involvement. So, yeah, I mean, if he would have gotten around to killing the old woman, he definitely would have gotten a boon from her. Because like I said, she spends almost every time that we see her in these episodes, she's talking about honoring her dead husband and all the gardening work that she's been paying for and blah, blah, blah. So, another person like Smitty, just a salt of the earth type character. So now, as far as why writer Rob Hedden used the mulcher, I quote, "The inspiration for this story followed the general rule of coming up with a sinister object to launch the tale. I'd seen a mulcher grind up a tree in my neighborhood and immediately latched onto it as a candidate for curious goods. Although a huge grinding machine is not exactly a trinket that can sit on a shelf inside the antique shop, the visceral fear trumped that concern. The idea of being gruesomely devoured by a big, loud, remorseless mulcher was impossible to resist. So even though he wasn't 100% sure how he was going to do it, he knew that he wanted there to be a mulcher in this episode." And then he goes on. What also stood out to me about this episode was the insight into the personal lives of the characters. Now, here is where we're talking about the stuff that I didn't enjoy, but obviously Lacy and Mike enjoyed a little bit more than me. The whole, the personality conflicts, the relationship issues between Mickey and Lloyd, and then that tender moment at the end with the cousins. It almost seems like that end of this episode is a turning point in this series. I'm hoping that's the case. Obviously, we'll know as we move on to the next few episodes, but I'm really hoping that this is a turning point where the cousins are going to be at each other's throats a little bit less than they have been in the first 8 episodes and, move into a more professional relationship. So, fingers crossed that that's what we get, but who knows? Barclay Hope is the actor who played Lloyd. Lloyd was never contracted for anything but the first episode. I believe the writers and producers were still feeling it out and trying to find their rhythm. Nothing was etched in stone. Like they said on the casting breakdown, possible recurring appearances. So when he was hired for 1 episode with possible recurring episodes. And like I said, they were keeping it open to kind of see where the show evolved. They decided to bring him back for this episode, if anything, just to end the whole Mickey and Lloyd storyline. Obviously, we're not going to see Lloyd anymore. I'm hoping that we don't even hear about him anymore. I'm hoping that Mickey is able to move on and just, commit herself to Curious Goods and what she has to do here. Or for those who don't know, the actor who played Lloyd has also been in Just Shoot Me, Veronica Mars, and Persons of Interest. Obviously, we know about Veronica Mars because Lacy is very adept at 90s and 2000s television. So thank you for that, Lacy. Now, according to the writers, and this actually leads back to a point that Lacy made earlier about the ineffectual kiss that they shared. According to Rob Hedden, the writer, Lloyd and Mickey never loved each other. It's a lot of, I care for you, I don't want to lose you. But if you notice, neither one of them ever say, I love you. And I think that's a purposeful choice by the writer because he's kind of showing that Lloyd, and even I mentioned Lloyd earlier being that traditional, 80s yuppie, and he actually mentions that specifically. Lloyd is the stereotypical WASP, and Mickey at this point in the series is more like WASP light. She's quirky and inventive, but still has a little bit of entitlement to her, which I'm hoping kind of goes away as the series moves on. So yeah, that's all I have on this episode. So like I said, we will see the actor who plays Lloyd one more time, but he'll be playing a different character. Lloyd is gone, and if you ask me, the series is better off for it, but obviously I'm just one person. So let's go ahead and bring Mike back in here. Mike, what do you think about us never seeing Lloyd again? Are you happy about it? Don't care? Sad?
I'm okay never seeing Lloyd again. I don't think he brings too much to the table.
Yeah, like I said, I think he actually does the opposite. I think he actually drags the episode down. Like when Mickey is, boo-hooing about Lloyd, it's like this is all time that could be spent trying to figure out, who has this mulcher, where it is, who is it killed, blah, blah, blah. And she's like in her bedroom crying about her man, which I know it's a real life thing. It happens. We've all cried ourselves to sleep at some point in our lives, but like I said, the show is called Friday the 13th, the series. It's not called, Gilmore Girls, the series, or Gilmore Girls at Curious Goods. You know what I mean? So I just don't need that. If other people enjoy it, awesome. But for me, I just want to see the cursed object. I want to see Jack use his brain to try to figure out how to get it back, who has it. And I want to see Mickey and Ryan doing their investigations, and I want to see people die. It's that simple. I don't care about relationship stuff. Like even that tiny little bit. Do you remember the episode, the Cup of Time episode, where that older lady was kind of in love with Jack? Like even that little bit of storyline just kind of it's like I don't need it. I don't need to know that this little old lady's smitten with Jack. It doesn't really add much to the story. Though you could make the argument with Cup of Time that maybe it did add a tiny little bit to the story. But in this episode, my opinion, it added nothing to it. So that's about all I have. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to my co-host to see if they have any closing thoughts before we get out of here. So Miss Lacy Lou, anything to say before we leave?
Just to piggyback off of what you were saying, I don't necessarily would say like I enjoyed it for what this show is. I think it was different than the previous episodes, which
Valid.
I feel like it gave us a little bit more context into these characters because, like you said, it is, we're only 9 episodes in, and I agree to the point that they didn't know exactly where they were going to go with these characters. But I think it did kind of provide a definitive moment that I think is maybe important because they do, they kind of just jump in and like they're putting their lives at risk every fucking episode. So I think it was kind of nice to see that dilemma and, the sacrifice that, she's making, in her personal life to, as Jack said, the shop needs you, like people need you, like this is important work that we're doing here. So I think it was an important moment. I mean, like it is a popcorn show, so it's definitely not needed, but in my opinion, I think it provided that definitive moment of the choice of how ridiculous it's probably going to get from here on out. I think we've lost the grounded if I had to predict, because I haven't seen any of these episodes. So if I had to predict, I think any ground. I don't think we will be in reality anymore going forward. So
yeah. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, well, I agree, but I think it's interesting to see that play out like that. So
I hear you. Yeah, maybe if I cared a little bit more about Mickey as a character, I would care more about her relationship woes. But, like I said, because we just spent 8 episodes watching Mickey be a contrarian at every opportunity. Right. She takes every opportunity to make fun of Ryan. She takes every opportunity to make a joke at his expense or to call him an idiot or whatever the case may be. And then suddenly I'm supposed to care at episode 9. I'm suddenly supposed to care about her relationship woes. Like that's a little bit too much of a drastic change for me.
Didn't you say at one point though, like I don't know if I'm remembering correctly, but some of them were like filmed out of sequence?
Yes. At this point, we're done with that. It was just like the first 4 or 5 episodes were out of sequence.
They did film this one intentionally.
I think at this point, yeah. Once we hit episode 5, everything is in order now. They're shot in order.
Yeah, because it would make sense if this was like the second episode.
Yes, exactly. I would have accepted it as the second episode.
So it does seem weird to like have them go through all the crazy shit that they've been through the past 2 months, I guess, to
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they're working hard at Curious Goods. They're putting in that overtime.
Hey, yeah, they've returned 9 cursed objects now in 2 months. So yeah, they're definitely working. All right, Mike, any closing comments before we get out of here?
No, I mean, I did think the ninth episode in the first season was a little like it was a different choice, I guess, to have Mickey do like the should I stay or should I go arc, because it kind of makes sense for either that to happen like at the very beginning or like more later into the show after she's been like exhausted by all the items they've had to get. But then again, I can't remember if they even knew how much seasons they were going to get, so maybe
Right.
they didn't even take that into consideration like at this time. But
Yeah.
overall, yeah, I don't think it was one of the stronger episodes, but I usually give a little more charity to anthology shows because it's usually always a mixed bag. You take the good with
Yeah.
the bad. You kind of look at them as like a body of work as opposed to like a single episode in a vacuum. But yeah, I'd have to say this is easily in the lower half of what we've covered so far.
Yeah, well, I already said it. This is easily my least favorite. I mean, it's still, I can still watch it and not pull my hair completely out. Like I said, yeah, it did take me 2 sittings to watch it, but overall, it wasn't that much worse than episode 2 with the monks. I mean, I did enjoy the flying guillotine in that one. The sentient guillotine blade that chased him around. I thought that was mildly entertaining. Like very little of this episode actually entertained me. Like I said, the kills were so tame. The backstory of the mulcher was so thin that there just wasn't really much here for me to enjoy. So, just me personally, like I said, my personal opinion.
One last thing. So Poker Face season 2 just dropped. I know this probably doesn't have anything to do with the show, but just talking about how transcendent some things are. I did watch the first episode of that, and it's kind of like an anthology show. I mean, it's a different story, but it's at the same time connected to one cohesive story, but you get different mysteries each week. But the first episode that dropped, one of the plot points is actually a character that is wearing overalls, much like we see Adrian wearing in this and Michael Myers. So I just think it's funny that, it's such a definitive costume piece. I know
Absolutely.
I just thought I had to mention it because I mean, this was 87 and now we're in 2025 and it's still, such a costume almost.
No, it's true. I mean, most of us horror fans, I mean, we see overalls, we think Michael Myers like instantly. And I think that's going to continue since we haven't had too many great overall clad killers over the last few years. But yeah. All right, folks. Well, that's going to do it for episode 9. One thing that I forgot to mention at the beginning of the episode, I want to wish the Friday the 13th movie franchise a happy birthday. Yes, today is the 45th anniversary of the release of the original Friday the 13th. It came out May 9th, 1980. And yes, 10-year-old Mr. Venom was there with his very irresponsible mother, who probably should not have dragged a 10-year-old to a Friday the 13th movie. But my mother was a big horror fan, and I have no idea what my father was doing that night. So there was nobody to watch me. So yeah, 45 years of Friday the 13th, my absolute favorite horror franchise.
How crazy is it that it released that closely to Mother's Day? Do you think that it was like pre-planned? Does anybody know?
I mean, I don't know definitively. You'd have to ask Sean Cunningham, but I would say yes. Like, how could it not?
That has to be the ultimate Mother's Day movie then, right?
Yeah, or Mother's Day specifically. Well, either the original or the remake, which are 2 very different movies, but still both watchable in their own right. So, like I said, folks, happy birthday to Friday the 13th. It is, as we record today, May 9th. It is the 45th anniversary. So I know what I'm doing tonight. I hope I know what some of our listeners are doing tonight as well. Obviously, it won't be May 9th by the time you hear this episode because of my slow ass editing. But, hopefully the fans that need to know. And that's pretty much it for us, folks. So yeah, on behalf of Lacy Lou and Mike Maryman, I am Mr. Venom, announcing the store is now closed. Thank you all for visiting, and we'll see you next time here at the Crystal Lake gift shop. Let's say bye to the folks.
Bye. Killer mommy.
Peace.
Ari Lehman's the only true Jason.